affirming positive aspects of motherhood, more of the celebratory. What we can do is also think about any other women who have been nurturing to you, guided you, inspired you. And so if you hadn't thought about that before today, you can go ahead and do that as well, because that is a form of nurturance that can make a very large difference in our lives. I know I've experienced that too, and I'll share a little of that later. So if you did remember to bring an object, please show that and share, and I will look to call on you. Um, and if you do not have an object, don't feel that you cannot share. Okay, so let me open it up at this point and just wave your hand, and we'll see where we go. Rose.
Hello, everyone. These are two Korean ducks that my mother gave Patrick and I. My mother visited Korea for the Olympics with her sister Nancy in 1988. It's traditional to give ducks to a newlywed couple. They are a symbol of marital harmony. You're supposed to sit them on the table where their beaks are touching, if you're happy. And if you're not happy, I guess you could put them this way. Patrick, you had one. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, when we were preparing for this, I realized my mother, who has passed on over 50 years ago, I have nothing of hers. And I was thinking of something to have. And remembering in the Middle Ages, when they built the great cathedrals, they would put gargoyles around the outside to frighten away evil spirits and protect mothers and young women. So I thought I'd just show a gargoyle.
Mm.
And I knew Rose's mother, who passed on a few years ago, lived to be 95. I knew her for the whole time we were married. I knew her longer than I knew my own mother. And her and my beloved Aunt Helen had a big impact on my life and made me realize that what a caring family is all about.
Thank you, Patrick. We're done, Marcia.
Okay, anyone else? Donna.
Hi, everyone. This is a plant that when my mother died 6 years ago, she had a small African violet. I mean, I think it hadn't really been watered very often or taken care of. And now this plant blooms. I split it out into two other plants. So I have three big plants. And my mother and I, had times where we butt heads and had our ups and downs. But today I'm remembering all the love and the openness and all the help that she's given me through my life.
Okay, and then I saw Mike Landrum's hand.
There. So here's a little picture of my mom. Sorry, it's reflecting the light and everything. Anyway, she's about 70 in this picture. And that was about the age she was when she became a grandmother from my daughter. And I was 52 years old when I became a father. And her comment to me was, "Now you'll know." And she'd been waiting for my comeuppance for many, many years until I finally succeeded in becoming a father. So at last I knew what parenthood was. And my mother's great love, she had many passions, among them golf and society. She became the leader of every organization she ever belonged to. And she was a painter. So here's a painting that she did of my daughter, Elizabeth, that I particularly love. This is it shows Elizabeth with her favorite doll. That's yes, stuffed toy. That's I can't remember the name of it now, but anyway, this now hangs in my bedroom. Still remembering my mom.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Eddie.
Hello. I left my home when I was 20 years old and didn't have many opportunities to visit. So I feel like my mother was distant from me from that point on because it was so expensive to fly halfway around the world to visit. But I have a nice picture of her. She passed away when she was 92, but towards the end, I was able to visit more often for a month at a time because I was retired by then. But this picture is a picture of my parents. I don't know, can you see it?
The reflection.
Reflection.
Yeah.
This is their 50th wedding anniversary party, and they are in the formal garb that they would wear to various important ceremonies. And at that time, my father was still alive. He passed away not long after that, and he was wheelchair bound towards the end. But my mother always supported him. She was a homemaker all her life, never drove a car, and all she did was cook, cook, cook for all 8 of us children. And she was a good cook. That's a fond memory I have of her. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, Lydia. Lydia had a hand up in the box, and I just want to remind you that you can go to the reactions at the bottom and click, and a hand can come up. So if for some reason I miss or you want to make sure I know you're waiting in line, I can see all of you. You can also do that. Okay, Lydia, go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. I'd like to show, if I can, this beautiful little wooden necklace I'm wearing. I don't know if you can make it out. It's a pine tree.
Oh.
And my father and my mother believed very much in service, so that before I was born, when she was having miscarriages that I alluded to, the Second World War finally ended, which I alluded to in my song. They were counselors and head of a beautiful camp in Maine, where my mother's from. It was called the Pine Tree Camp, and it was only for orthopedically impaired children. And I finally did get born, and I can be seen as a baby, but I wanted to show you my mother's portrait instead. Here she is. She was an amazingly beautiful woman.
Mhm.
And she lived her life in trying to connect people together. My father's headmaster of all these different schools, so we moved a lot, and there was not a much income. So she had to work in real estate. So I didn't see much of her except occasionally, and that was when all the distances would come that everyone kind of alludes to. But as soon as my daughter was born, I was only 20. She rushed out to Elmira and she bought all this stuff, bassinets, and she was there for my daughter. So when I sing about my mother, I'm really singing about my mother's relationship with my daughter. It was just awesome. And my daughter and I, we're all one family. She passed away at age 95. So she lived a long life. Actually, she was 96 and a half. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, and then I saw Hollis's hand up. And next, Jay. You got to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My mother died about 7 years ago, I'm thinking. I thought I'd share this with you. This is a picture of my mother when she was about 5 years old.
Oh, so cute.
Her mother was convinced that she was a second Shirley Temple, because this is the 30s. And she tried to even, get her into some kind of advertising or movies. However, my mother went on to become a very intelligent woman who became a librarian. And I attribute her to my love for books and reading. She also loved music, as did my father. So they were a great team in bringing up my two brothers and I, and I'm totally in her debt for giving me the love and knowledge that she gave to me.
Okay, and Jay.
Good morning, everybody. Just a delight to hear all of these stories. I am the daughter of Stevie Moyer and also the daughter of Sally Hetrick. I had an adoptive mother and I had a birth mother that I never met until I was in my mid-30s. My birth mother, Sally, is still alive today. I think it was Elizabeth who suggested we bring an object that connects us to motherhood. And I love that. So I love that because motherhood is such a broad experience. And this little nest, I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah.
it is a little bird's nest. And I think of the twigs that were placed in this to create this holding environment, the deliberateness of that, the intention of that, the strength and support of this, and also kind of how vulnerable it is. And as I think about motherhood, I think also about the women who have been wonderful mothers to me also, and who have inspired, who have nurtured, who have protected, who have encouraged. And my father was a really good mother as well. He had a lot of those nurturing qualities, and I, in many ways, felt very mothered by my beloved father too. So to all of this, as we hold these nests, even the nests that we're creating here together. Thank you.
I just this morning had the experience of, I can look out on my deck and I have coir lining some window boxes. And I was laughing because the birds whom I love and I feed, there were a couple of birds that were picking at the coir to take it to build a nest. And I had mixed feelings. Leave it alone. You're going to mess it up, and go ahead and create your little holding environment, as you put it. So, okay, anybody else? Dot, winner.
Dot, you're muted, Dot. Okay.
You're still muted, Dot. Try again.
Did that work?
Go.
Oh, thank goodness. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I just stepped away for a few minutes because my daughter came upstairs to give me a present. So I got this lovely box of affirmations. And that's all I want to say.
Uh, okay, Diane.
I appreciate, Elizabeth, your first reading, because I know I have many friends that have struggled with mom relationships. My mom always said her greatest joy was being a homemaker as well, like Ete said. And she had two master's degrees, one in education and one in linguistics. But she maybe worked maybe just a few months her whole life, but she obviously worked in the home. And when I was in Asheville last October, I went to a street fair and I met a woman rabbi there, and they were selling objects of art to raise money for their community. And this is in Hebrew, and it talks about the idea of the mother being the center of the family. And I hang this in my kitchen because it really meant a lot to me. It shows the food preparation. It shows the dove, the idea of peace. It shows flowers, the idea of trying, like Elvis Presley's song, trying to infuse beauty into the world. And then the candles, the light. But then I really like her expression because it's befuddled. And that's pretty much how I felt as a mother too. I tried to infuse all these things, but at times I definitely, as being an older mom, I was definitely befuddled.
Okay, Jan Kinney.
This is a photograph of my Aunt Harriet, and she was my second mother. And she was a great presence in my life, a great support. And this is a deck of cards, and it's an activity that Harriet and I shared until the end of her life. And the helpful lesson she taught me is if you win at cards, tell everybody.
Okay, anyone else? Elizabeth Tarvin.
That is very funny because there have been several times when I've played cards with my dad on Saturday nights and won and wanted to tell everyone during joys and concerns, but decided that was not appropriate. Before I show you my object, I just wanted to say that I don't know if it's privilege or luck, but I feel so lucky having had a great mom who I'll mention, being able to have children, and also of having a great dad and a great partner who helped us be good moms, I think, for sure. So my object is a streamer, a birthday streamer. And I picked this object because I wanted to talk about birthdays. I have 4 quick things to say about birthdays. And one, obviously, they connect to motherhood because of the actual day of your birth. Secondly, I wanted to say that my mom was fantastic at creating special birthdays, which had homemade cakes and wrapped presents and streamers hanging from the chandelier to the corners of the tables, and she did every holiday and actually every day she made it really special. And so she was a fantastic mom, and she didn't have that kind of mom. So the fact that she was able to be that kind of mom was really great. The third thing I wanted to say, this is just a quick story that relates to birthdays and motherhood, is that I once, at the end of an exhausting day of having a birthday party for one of my daughters, we were having birthday cake and we carried the cake out, and she blew the candles out and she opened her presents, and then she looked at me and very innocently, not in a bratty way, but in a very innocent way, she said, "No party hats?" And it's a funny story because I felt devastated, like, oh my God, she wanted party hats and I didn't think to get them. But it was also a story of I feel like as mothers and parents and people in general, it seems like we can never quite do enough. We always sort of fall a teeny bit short. And the final thing I just wanted to say, which I alluded to in that last one, is all a popular term right now is invisible labor, and all the work that mothers do that don't, you do see the streamers, but there's a lot of things we don't see that it goes on a daily basis that we maybe we don't necessarily realize is happening. And so anyway, that is my all my birthday tales about motherhood. Thank you.
Jim, did I see your hand up? Yeah.
My mother grew up in the South. My father grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up in New Jersey on the East Coast. So I've always felt I've had three sets of sort of cultural experiences. I think of mothers, among many other things, as conveying sort of like the family lore, the family tradition. And they probably do it mostly involuntarily. In the South, people are storytellers, and my mother was a storyteller. And I remember, as growing up, hearing her tell stories, and most of the time, when I got to be a teenager, especially, I kind of tuned her out because I'd heard some of these stories before, and I wasn't that interested. And of course, now I realize I should have taken notes. Because her stories were wonderful stories, stories about teaching in a one-room school and things like that. But the object is a small Seth Thomas clock that would sit on a mantle. And this, my mother said she remembered, I believe it was every Sunday night, her father would wind the clock. She had a great affection for her father. He, I don't want to take too much time, but my grandfather was born in 1849. And when he was 14 or 15, he tried to enlist in the Union Army. Fortunately, I guess for me, his mother, after breakfast, when she knew the recruiter was there and he was going to go, and she sent him up to the attic, and she closed the door to the attic, and he spent the day in the attic and missed his golden opportunity. But he was married for, I think, 30 years to a woman whose first name was Elizabeth, and they had no children, and she died. And several years later, he remarried my grandmother, who was about 25. And they had 5 children. And my mother was named after his first wife that he loved dearly, but they couldn't have any children. I have hundreds of stories from her, and it's a way of conveying not only the family history, but the culture of a place as well. So mothers, I think they inculcate all kinds of things. And I deeply appreciate that.
Sue Ann? Unmute.
There we go.
There we go.
Good morning. I have my knitting as my object today. My mother seemed to be knitting all the time, although when she wasn't working, she was a nurse, so she worked a full-time job all of my life. She and her mother was also a knitter, and she did all kinds of hand. She was a seamstress, and she made quilts, and she made braided rugs, and she this is always to have your hands busy. My Midwest my Midwest roots, and it's so lovely to me. My daughter here does not do this, but my granddaughters do. My Waldorf grandchildren are learning to knit at school and starting in first grade. And now I can talk to my 3rd grade granddaughter about knitting, and I can be interested in her projects, and she can ask me questions about knitting, and it is connecting I feel like I'm just connecting back to my mother and my grandmother, whom I saw knitting all the time. So.
Anyone else? Okay, don't see any hands, so I'm going to go to those on the phone. If anyone wants to unmute, say your name and speak about your mother, here's your chance. Waiting, waiting, waiting. No. Okay, then I'm going to go. I have here a plant. Now, this is a geranium, my favorite color of geranium, but my mother had a small rose garden, and it was these mini roses. And I never thought about gardening. I didn't get going until sometime in Nyack, where one of the parishioners gave me a perennial. And I was so ecstatic the next year when it came back up that really gave me my start as a gardener, much beyond my mom. My mom did things on a smaller scale. you know? um, so that was a good thing. Then I also have my mom's wedding ring. I can't see it, it's so tiny. She had it reset. It was very simple when she was married, right after World War II. Immediately after World War II, my dad was a POW, so she was pretty happy he came back. But I loved the design of what she had. And so when she died, I have only 2 things of hers. I have this wedding ring, and then she and I sewed, and my sister did too, but I kept up with it. So I have like 12 masks that I made and a whole bunch of others for COVID. And so I got the little Singer sewing machine that they call a quilter's machine, because you can carry it around. And I have quilted with that, and I still sew with that. And I love that reminder. The sewing chest is out at a friend's of mine in Michigan, and we haven't yet shipped it out. I don't know what it would cost, and it takes up more storage space, but it's a lot nicer than the one I have. Now, my mom, on a more negative note, was not a good, she didn't dream for me. She thought I should only be a nurse, a teacher, or a mother first, and then maybe a nurse or a teacher. And so when I went to get my master's, at that time I was helping put my husband through seminary, which she just thought was the bee's knees. She said, "What do you need that for?" And so when I did postgraduate, I didn't get much better. But then once I had achieved something, then she was happy to applaud me more to others than to myself. But I had a supervisor in postgraduate school whom, when we finished, I said, "So what should I do? Go into private practice?" And she said, "But of course." So that's why I'm in private practice as a clinician. I was always more hesitant to strive for something more for myself. And, it had a real effect on me. And so my supervisor, Miriam Pierce, was very instrumental in my doing what I've done ever since. And I love doing it, and I'm good at it. So I'm grateful for that. Okay, I think that is it. I think we've come to the conclusion of all the sharing. I know it was rich. I love hearing about it. There's humor, depth. Um, it's just great. I love that so many of you are willing and able to share well. So I think we'll bring this to a close. I don't know. We always have a comments and questions period. I don't know if anybody wants to comment further or comment on anybody else's sharing. Here's your chance. Mike?
Well, my mother lived to be 95 as well. And the main thing that I recall about my mom is when after my father died at the age of 82, and they had been married together for 57 years, she called me up and said, "Now will you help me write the story of my 20th year, which she spent in Italy?" And she spent an entire year of 1938 into 1939 in Italy, having amazing adventures, and it was quite a coming of age experience for her. And we created a little memoir book called Americanata, and she was very proud of that. And for the rest of her life, which was another 14 years, she lorded it over everyone as the author, and had book signing parties. And she was the dominant star in our family constellation, and a positive thinker. She said, I live positively on purpose. And in fact, one famous story in our family is that I was in the Army, and when I got orders to go to Vietnam, I called her up and told her so. And her reaction was, "Well, isn't it wonderful? You'll be able to see that part of the world."
Oh, no.
And I know that, it sounds totally, unconscious, but she was trying to reframe that experience for me, and offered that as a way. And in fact, I came home without a scratch. So all love to Becky Landrum for me.
Mm. Anyone else? Okay, if not, I think we'll move on, Rose, to our closing music.